Hello and welcome to another video on Pidini doing stuff and filming it. This video is part 2 of the World Band radio restoration project that I've been doing. There is a link to part 1 in the description of this video. Originally it was just going to be the one video on it, but it ended up being a much longer project than I originally anticipated, so I decided to make it a two-parter. So yeah, in this one we see the last of the footage from the first day, mostly cleaning up the external components, the case, and then we shall reassemble it. We get the speaker grill reattached, all clamped down and glued on nicely, and then we put it away in the study in its pride of place. Thank you for watching. Okay, so for this stage I've finally finished making my cup of tea. I'll put that over there to brew, and we're going to be using, I've gone and fetched my partner's toothbrush. They don't actually watch my channel, so they'll never know. And then this is just some hot water with just a little bit of mild dish soap in it, washing up liquid for us Brits. This is just an old Tupperware box that I was going to throw away, but I thought it would be useful for this purpose. So we'll start with this grill. We're just going to wet the brush. We don't want it soaking, so we don't want fucking water everywhere, especially when we get onto the bit with the electronics in it. And I'm just going to see if we can So I'm not applying any real pressure, just less than say if you were writing on a piece of paper. For the young'uns out there, paper's this substance made from the pulp of trees that we used to write on before everything went to iPods and shit. iPads rather, showing me age now a lot. Yeah, I don't even know if they fucking teach you how to use a pen in school now.
What do they teach you kids in school these days?
Tell you what's weird, when I'm at work and I get young people, teenagers, just starting out on their driving career, you know, they've just passed their driving test or they've just got their provisional license, say, give their date of birth as 2004. It's like, I was getting ready to do my GCSEs when you were born, you little shit.
Ha! You're old!
Of course. So this is slowly coming clean anyway. So as you can see, turn the right way up. Coming clean. I don't think the camera's picking it up, but yeah, this lettering down the bottom has a slight texture into it, which unfortunately means it then holds on to dirt quite a lot. It's basically, as you can see from the back, it's stamped. These top bits appear to be printed, because there's no imprint on the other side. But this is stamped into it, which means it then does pick up dirt quite easily, so I'll just keep going with the brush. Even if we don't get it perfectly clean, it will at least be all nice and minty fresh. Getting dish soap in my fucking cup of tea now. Oh, it's not perfect, but as you look at it, it's certainly a lot shinier than it was. So I'll just give the rest of it a quick going over. Just make sure there's no dirt in amongst all these little holes. Alright, give that a rinse. Not looking too bad. Getting a bit cleaner. So yeah. If there's any point trying to clean this other side, let's give it a go. No, it's not going to do anything to that old glue. It's worth a go though. So yeah. There we are, it's looking a bit better. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with these dents. You see, you can apply more and more pressure to them, try and bend it back the other way, but I get the feeling to get it completely flat again, it's just going to make it worse. I think we might have to just live with it. It's not too bad, especially now it's looking a bit cleaner. Let's see what we can do about these little chips of the paint that's come out of it though. Finish making my now dish soapy tea. Okay, I'll let it dry completely over there. Now, with regards to this bit, I want to be careful not to take this bit off around the edge. Now it seems to be pretty well on there. I think this is actually 2 pieces of plastic pressed together, like when you make a car number plate. But there's no real reason to be scraping away at this other than to get this excess glue off the inside. At least whoever glued this on didn't go completely balmy with the glue on this. They had a bit more sense. But yeah, this just needs a bit of a clean up. I'm going to, rather than getting it all soapy straight away, let's just try and give it a dry polish. So I suspect that the biggest problem with this, because I'm not going to be able to get all the little scratches out, is probably dirt, basically greasy finger marks. If I can get those off, it's not too bad. Just need to get this really glue off the front from where the sellotape's been holding it together. That might well call for a bit of a... So... Okay, it's coming off slowly. I'm basically having to use this cloth, which yes is a dishcloth, but it's never actually seen any dishes. I keep it up here for, well, for when I'm working on my guns mostly. But it is slowly coming off. I'm basically just having to dig my fingernail in through the cloth to bring the glue from the sellotape away. Tell you what though, if you do have something that breaks and you want to try and fix it yourself, don't use sellotape. And do your research, make sure you're using the correct glue if you're going to glue something. It's just so much nicer, and you'll feel so much better about it if you do a proper job. Don't overdo the glue. You don't need that much of it. If it's the proper glue, you shouldn't need that much of it. You should only need a very small amount. And if you do need loads of it, you're probably using the wrong one. Yeah, and don't use sellotape because it just leaves marks that we then have to clean off. But yeah, take your time, and the rewards are far greater when you know that you've fixed something to a much higher standard than just bodging it. There we go. Not looking too bad. We'll put that at the back. I'm going to try to avoid touching the face of it. Now, is this dry yet? It is. Excellent. Right. I'm going to leave the bending to it out now. I don't think I'm going to get it completely flat again, but I don't think I need to. I think when I come to glue this back on, when I clamp it down, that will force it up to the shape that I want anyway. So if I just apply a little bit of pressure. So I don't think it needs to be completely flat now. I just want to do something about these little dings. I say I'm not painting it because we'll lose this lettering, which is actually in remarkably good condition. So we're just going to try a black felt tip pen. Not writing on it, we're just going to dab on it. Well, that's working. Although interestingly, yeah, it says waterproof and it's not sure what colour it's meant to be. It's got a blue lid. It says black on it. It appears black on paper, but on there it's most definitely appearing to be slightly blue. But it does cover it. So if we just find one that's actually the colour it's supposed to be, we'll be on to the winner. Another reason you shouldn't use sellotape though, I've noticed, especially at the top here and along the bottom here, where the sellotape has been on, it's caused the pin on this bit of metal to bubble. And if we try too hard to clean the remains of the sellotape glue off, I'm afraid we're probably going to end up stripping the pin off, which we don't want to do. And it's all right dabbing the little chips off it, but if I end up having to repaint the whole piece, that's another matter. So instead of using that felt tip pen, which was a genius idea until it turns out it somehow dries a different colour, I was going to use this blotting ink and this old style fountain pen. But now that I've found my permanent marker, that's a better idea. That blotting ink I keep in my writing desk, although I was about to say very rarely use it. I never use it. And the reason being is, whilst it is quite nice to write with an old-fashioned fountain pen, you don't put a cartridge in it. You basically write a few letters, maybe a word or two, and dunk it in. You have to write again. But you need a special type of paper called blotting paper. If you use normal modern style paper, it just the ink just soaks through it, and you just end up with a huge mess. So yeah, and the blotting paper is quite expensive. I think I paid £1 for 2 sheets where I got the pen. I can probably get it much cheaper online, but considering you can normally go buy a whole ream of it for less than £1, yeah, it's not cheap for basically for showing off with. It has no real practical use. Anywho, let's just try and sort this out. So we're just going to dab the marker. We'll go over that spot again. See, it's shiny at first, but as it dries it should look a lot better. So we'll just dab it there to cover that. Good. That bit. That's not looking too bad. That's coming across in the light. As it dries, it's becoming less obvious. Looking better. I think staring at it up close, you're still going to be able to tell. But there's only me going to do that, and I'm not going to do it very often. So we're just going to do this edge. I'm not going to do the other side. Just going to run it along there like that. There we are. Looking good. Just make sure this edge is done. Now, ink doesn't stick to metal very well, but if you give it a chance, when it dries, it should look okay. You can see this first corner looking less and less conspicuous all the time. I'm doing the edges, not because I think it used to look like that, but because if I can't get the bit of metal to reattach as perfectly as I want it to, at the very least it won't be so prominent if one bit is sitting slightly proud, because it won't be the same colour as the casing. Try not to touch any of the wet bits, but there we go. At an angle you can see the spots where I've put the ink on. That will dry and over time, and it'll look a lot better. Yeah, from a distance, already looking good. So I'll just, quick swig of tea. Alright. Let's do the back plate then. So this, still trying to figure out what this means, but we're definitely keeping it. It's an original feature, so it's definitely staying. Sure, I'll figure it out eventually. But yeah, this is intact. Few marks, but it's plastic, so there's not going to be a lot we can do about scratches. So this can just have a quick clean up. In fact, we'll use the toothbrush again. It's mostly along this top edge actually that needs a clean. I suppose that's where fingers go. It's the contact points that are always going to be the muckiest, so I'll just give that a good clean through as well. There we are. And there's a little bit there. So that's the problem. I don't know what's on it, or even if you can see it, but right there, there's something some sort of stain on the plastic. Because it's this slightly textured stuff, it's really difficult to get the dirt out, because it goes into all the little gullies. Makes it really hard to clean out. Never mind. This top bit's come up nicely though, at least. So let's see if we can get that bit clean as well. Give this grill a good scrub through. Let's just check on this. Still drying in places. I think it's going to take a while to dry. The battery compartment's looking fairly clean. We'll give this little bit here where it says open and little scrub, because of course you do get your fingers in there. You've got this little grippy panel that's a good, attract dirt. But it doesn't need much done this, because it's not actually that mucky. So I'll give it a good scrub. That should be okay. Right, now onto the sensitive part. A bit with the electronics. Now this does need a clean, especially this bit along here. Let's add the tape on it. We do have to be careful, especially when I get these buttons. I do have to be careful, and this bit needs a good clean. I'm not going to get this glue mark off, but we may be able to get this tape mark off the bottom. I don't want to try and get the volume button clean. That's probably the muckiest bit of it. The problem is we're now mixing water with the electrics, so got to be careful here. I mean, as long as we don't go completely bonkers, any tiny amount that gets in there should be easily dried off. We've taken the batteries out, so it shouldn't make any odds to it. What we're going to do is we're going to angle it down slightly to do this. And that way, any water that does get in, gravity will pull it away from the electronics. So we're just going to screw this back together. Not the whole lot, just this bit, which is with these two screws, which is the small ones with the point. There's one at each end of the battery compartment. But of course, with the back cover on, we couldn't see this first one. There we go. We'll just do it finger tight, with no downward pressure other than the weight of the screwdriver. Got to be gentle with these little screws. Letting the weight of the screwdriver do the work. Finger tight. There we go. That's not going anywhere now. Good. Right, let's move on. Now, this bit around the front, I keep saying I want to try and keep this gauge clean. It is about the cleanest bit on here. I've managed to pick up a few marks while I've been fighting around with this. But it seems okay. I don't want to be going and pushing dirt into it by going mad. So we're not going to use any soap and water if we can avoid it. We're just going to use the whole cloth and fingernail tactic again. Not tactic, technique. Okay. I've decided not to worry about this. We're not going to be able to see it once it's back on. I've managed to clean the cone, but yeah, this glue ain't coming off. So, yeah. So let's just move on to, let's do this bottom bit. Like I said, that glue stain isn't coming off, but we might be able to get these tape marks off it. So, same again, just light scrubbing with a toothbrush and a bit of soapy water. The more I do things like this, the more I begin to despise sellotape. I swear to God, sellotape is good for... Well, it's good for sealing envelopes. Because nowadays you buy an envelope if you want to send a letter, because I'm old-fashioned sometimes. and the glue on the envelope never fucking works. So I use sellotape to hold it down. Oh, and it's good for wrapping presents as well. So you use it a handful of times a year. Don't use it for repairing your electronic devices, because, well, you're just a git if you do. Right. A little bit more water. Let's see if we can get this clean. What's this side looking like? This side, the plastic is thankfully nice and smooth, with the obvious exception being the tuning knob, which needs a clean. It has the edges of it are textured, so this will be another nice and careful, even more careful than the other side. I'm just going to hold it down. I'm just going to brush. That's it. Hold it down and brushing away from the circuit board. Again, if a little amount of water does get onto it, it's not at the end of the world, because the battery's out and we can dry it out. The only bit that I will be really worried about getting wet will be the microchip in the middle, but the rest of it should be okay with a little dampness as long as we dry it out properly. Okay. Alright, that's not too bad either. Again, not perfect, but see, when I do things like this, I don't always go for perfect. Partly because I think it's an element of diminishing returns, really. You will end up doing more and more work, and in some cases, especially if you say working on a car, spending ever-increasing amounts of money, but not really seeing anything back. You know, the results will start to get smaller and smaller for the amount of money that you're spending. So I don't think it's going to get any cleaner. So I think it's time to start popping this back together now. So we're going to find our plastic glue to begin with. Actually, we'll start by putting the back cover on and getting the aerial back in. The aerial, I was going to do something about the bits that are missing. I don't think I'll bother now, because it's not quite the same black as the other bit of metal. So if we just put it on, it looks worse on one side than the other, so we'll put it on that way around. And it's still reasonably clean as well, so we're just going to screw that back on. So yeah, let's just get the cover back on. Make sure we've got this the right way around. Put the aerial in first, because it has a little, I don't know if you can see it there, a little bit that it sits into, and the screw has to go through it. So we shall get it to go back together. Go. Right, first screw holds the antenna in place. Line that up properly. Again, just the weight of the screwdriver, doing it up finger tight. Make sure that works. Yep, that's not going anywhere. Good. And the last one was this whopping great behemoth. Again, just use the weight of the screwdriver. And we'll just do it up finger tight. The head is a bit worn on this, so a little bit of downward pressure towards the end. I'll do it up finger tight. Excellent. Right. That's not going anywhere. Looking a lot nicer. Out from the front. Fix that in a minute. Yep. Excellent. Pop those back out. Okay, right. Let's go and start. We're going to start with the gauge cover. For this, we're going to use just a tiny amount of plastic glue, basically Airfix glue, because it's 2 bits of plastic that we're sticking together. And then we're going to find some clamps and some appropriate glue for the metal and plastic on here. Let's get that done. Right. So this is the glue we're going to be using. I kept calling things Airfix glue earlier. Obviously, other types of model are available, other brands. This is actually from a Humbrol model kit that I've yet to make. Suitable, it says suitable for plastic model kits only. It's a solvent-based cement. Now, I suspect what the last person did that owned this, just got this and just went with it all over. Which, yeah, will have stuck it eventually, but it's also made a fucking mess for me to clean up. So, we're only going to use this for sticking the little fascia back on. At least we would if the fucking thing would open. I think it may have leaked slightly and glued its own lid on. Let's just break it off. Great. There we go. Now this stuff stinks, but I like it. As in, I like the smell. I don't know what I mean. It's difficult to describe. It's just a very strong, chemically glue type smell. Now, I'm not saying... There we go. Just break off all the little dry bits of glue. This is the first time I've actually opened this, but clearly it's sprung a leak whilst it's been in storage. Yeah, I'm not saying go out and sniff this glue. But if you don't know what it smells like, the best I can say to you is it's very, very chemically, very gluey. It smells the business. Yeah, and it will do a pretty good job of sticking your fingers together if you give it a chance. So what we're going to do, rather than just squeeze it out onto it, which will just make a mess, we're going to use an old dressmaker's pin. I'm just going to press it into the end. And get the tiniest amounts of glue on it. Yeah, the tiniest amount. And then we're just going to put it on the 4 corners. So when you're using this stuff, less is more. It will ruin whatever you're doing if you use far too much of it. So, of course, being a liquid, if you get it somewhere you don't want it to, you're going to have real trouble getting it back off. So I'm literally just getting a tiniest amount on the tip of this pin and dabbing it onto the corners. It's not like it has to hold any pressure or any weight, so we'll be okay with a small amount. Now, the more I think about it, the more I think we probably could use this glue to stick the little grill back on. The reason being is both things that we're looking to stick together are covered in glue residue, which this will stick to. It will stick to itself. So we might actually try that. The problem is it's come off once, so it will inevitably come off again. So I'd rather use something considerably more permanent. I'm thinking epoxy resin, if I can find my tube of it, because that will stick anything to anything. And once that dries, it is permanent. As in, it will not come up. As in, if you want to then separate the two objects, just go and buy two new ones. So yeah, right, that's it. That's all you need. tiny little bit. If anything, I think that might be a bit too much, but never mind. We'll give it a try. If it does sort of, what I'm trying to avoid is I press this in and it pushes it out along this see-through bit or into the gauge. We're trying to avoid that. But if it does, as long as we're quick and clean it off, it should be okay. So, but like I say, it doesn't need any real pressure applying to it. There we go. It's in. You'd never know. So I'm not going to press it down too hard. It has made contact. So there we go. I think they say for this an hour or so for it to stick. Leave it overnight for it to be completely set. So it still looks a little damp. It could well take all day for the ink to dry properly. But we're going to put this to one side for now. Leave it in the sun a bit longer. Because I need to go and find my clamps for it. Because when we glue this down, it's going to have to be clamped in place to get it to stay where I want it to. Because we want to really press it down. So I need to go and find my nice soft clamps. I think they're in the shed. Then again, if anyone actually sees my shed, I may as well be saying I think it's in Narnia. Or I think I stored it in the black hole. Because shit seems to go in there and he's never seen again. Right, another cup of tea and let's go find these clamps. Okay, so back to the old World Band radio. Now, the ink that I was applying to the grill has eventually dried. It's not perfect, it has come off a little in places, but we're not going to go over it just yet. We're going to see how it looks once we get it refitted. I'm thinking once it's back on, there shouldn't actually be that much left to do. So I went looking for my clamps, couldn't find them anywhere. If I had to guess at where they are now, I'm going to have to say in an alternate dimension. But never mind, I ordered some more off good old eBay. Here they are. I've got 4 of these. They were supposed to open to 3 inches in the description. As you can see, they don't come even close. 3 inches should have been more than enough to go around this radio, and they don't get even close. So I'm going to double check the description, make sure it wasn't me that ordered the wrong ones, but yeah, I might have to contact the seller about these. Well, I'm not going to send them back, they're still useful for other projects, but yeah, he might want to amend his description. And we also got this one, and you can set it there like that, and you screw that bit in to clamp it on. That gives us more adjustability. We can get the whole radio inside that if we need to. Now, I said earlier, well, I said it several times actually, it's important to get the correct glue. So today, for gluing plastic and metal together, we're going to be using this Gorilla epoxy resin. Now, I've had this tube a while. I have got another tube somewhere. It's probably in the same place as my old clamps. There we go. And yeah, as you can see, it comes in this syringe type packaging, and there's 2 substances in there, and yeah, one's this sort of pale yellowy colour and the other's just completely clear. And what you have to do is you have to mix them together before you apply it. Each one on its own doesn't actually do very much. I don't know how it works, but yeah. But this stuff is, I'd say it's the strongest glue you can buy. I mean, it depends on the application. I mean, if you're gluing, say, 2 bits of wood together, you get wood glue. Even your PVA glue, like you used to use in school, will do a fantastic job of gluing 2 bits of wood together. But if you're trying to glue things like this stuff is good. It does, however, mean that obviously you have to be quite careful with it. Try not to get it on your skin, or don't get it on anything that you don't want to glue to something else. Now, the packaging that it comes in, the plastic bit normally forms like a little tray, a mixing bowl that you can use, and you can get a little wooden spatula with it. Christ knows where that's actually gone. Probably the same place as my clamps as well, but there we go. So we've had to improvise. So we've got this old plastic pot that I've fished out of the recycling. And we're just going to use this concave section here in the top to mix it up. And the little wooden spatula, it's like a lollipop stick, really, but a little shorter and a little fatter, that you get with it wouldn't have been suitable for this anyway. We need something much finer. So I'm actually going to use the little metal cable ties that came around the clamps. They were wrapped around it, holding it to the rest of the packaging. So I've made them into a little tool like this, and we can just use it to apply the glue in very small amounts, and then we're going to clamp it in place. And then that should be it. So yeah, we'll be able to... The plan is, I don't know if this is coming across on camera, the plan is, if I can clamp it down hard enough, the little concave bit pops back in. I'll show you on this angle, on this camera, because there's better lighting. You can see, if I clamp it in tight enough and then get it to stay there, the dent that's in it should be pushed out and stay out. At least that's the plan anyway. So, I'll start off, let's mix up some epoxy resin. Now this says quite clearly on the front, sets in 5 minutes. And they're not lying, you do have to be quick with this stuff. I think the term careful but confident. It's also not exactly cheap, it's about £10 a tube. Now I've had this a long while. There we go. Didn't want to come out. It's coming now. That popping's just air bubbles in the syringe being pushed out. It's not actually making that noise. There we go. That doesn't look like much, but it should do. And you just pull back the syringe, because you don't want glue forming on the nozzle, because you'll never get the fucking thing back out. There's my lid. There it is. And then all you need to do is you stir it up. And you'll notice where you mix it together, it changes colour. It goes this sort of silvery, cloudy colour. That indicates it's good to go. And it's quite thick, and my god does it stink. And it's not like Airfix glue, which has a sort of chemically scent, but you quite like it. This stuff is horrible. As you can see, it's already starting to set, it's starting to clump up. So, we'll get going. And I only want to apply it around these edges along here. So we're literally just going to use the edge of this and just lay it on. As I said, less is more. I mean, the worst thing you can do is put too much on, because you're never getting this off. You can see I gave up trying to get the old plastic glue off that someone used. It just weren't going to happen. But if you can't get that off, you ain't never getting this stuff off. See, this is the problem with it. It sets that quickly, though, that you are going to have real trouble spreading it across the surface if you're not quick. There we go, that's a nice even coating. When this glue dries, it dries clear. And the stuff that I've got sitting in the pot here is already turning clear. Another thing it's good for, that I've used it a lot on, is fixing mugs. If you have your favourite teacup, coffee mug or whatever, and it's broken so the handles come off or someone dropped it, a bit of epoxy resin, put it back together. That's the one time when you do need to use a decent amount, however, because you need to get the seal watertight if you're going to use the thing again. It's perfectly safe to use. It's even dishwasher safe once it's set. Obviously you don't use it before it's set. But yeah, quite a few mugs that I'm quite fond of that got broken I glued them back together. But you do need to use a lot. Crockery is porous, so it absorbs some of the glue and then you just need more. There we go. Just put that to one side for now. Then all we're going to do is slide this into place like this. Press it down gently. Now you notice, because it's bent, this bit of metal, if you press it down one corner, it comes up at the other. So that's what the clamps are for. So we're going to clamp it on this corner. That's then going to push the other side up, which is fine. So then we're then going to clamp it on this corner as well. These clamps were all of about £3 for 4 on eBay. I think I ordered them Saturday, it's now Wednesday. There we go, I'm just going to clamp that one down. There we are. So that is looking quite firmly in place. I'll just move that one up slightly actually. There we go. And it's clamping down the middle section nicely. And as you can see, if you can see between the clamps, none of the glue has sort of spewed out. We had just the right amount on. It's going to form a nice seal. The bit of the grill is fitting snugly all the way around. I might want that corner to go down a bit more. Let's just move that up. And then allows the middle bit to move up. Typical. Fortunately we have the other clamp. There we are. So that's on. I'm happy we haven't had any spillage. There's maybe a tiny amount coming out the front there, which I'm just going to use this knife to pull away. I'm not going to use a cloth on my finger because then I risk spreading it. I just want to just pull it out of the way. There we are. That's okay. Wipe that off. There we go. So now I've just got to wait for it to dry. That will be set in a matter of, well, it's probably already set pretty firmly. But of course we're going to leave it on. We're going to leave it overnight with the clamps on. Let's pull back on this syringe somewhat. And get the lid on the right way around. There's another little design feature. I don't know if you can see, there's a little cut out on the size of this lid, so you can only put it on one way. That way you're not accidentally mixing a small amount of glue on the lid and rendering the rest of the syringe useless. So if you glue the lid on, you ain't getting it back off. Didn't really have a use for this in the end. Quite happy with that. We might be able to just clamp it on that way actually. Yeah. We'll leave that just exerting a little bit of pressure. And also it'll help to counterbalance that. There we go. So I'm going to leave that there. We'll leave it overnight. We'll take the clamps off in the morning. Yeah, give it a good 12 hours to set. So yeah, with a bit of luck, tomorrow it'll be a matter of putting the batteries back in. Quick inspection. I've just spotted a bit that I've missed during my cleaning, which I can clean up tomorrow. And then the jobs are good. And we'll have a nice little video to go on with. Alright, so it is now the next morning. And now normally I like to leave these things for a day, but we use such a small amount it should have dried. If you're using a lot of this, you want to leave it a bit longer. Now, This clamp was on earlier, but it wasn't doing very much, so I've just taken it off before I started filming. We're just going to remove these and see how secure it is. In theory, it will be very secure. In practice, fuck knows. So, well, it's not coming off. A nice flush seal. It's not completely uniform, but that's okay. The glue has sort of run out overnight in places, which is a little disappointing. Never mind, we might be able to scrape it off. When this stuff dries, it has an almost plastic feel to it. Just may be able to just cut this excess glue out. We'll do that later with a proper razor blade. So yeah, that is looking good. Let's try and get this last bit of dirt off. Last bit of whatever it is. It's either Airfix glue or sellotape glue. I think maybe it's Airfix glue from the previous owner. There we go. So yeah, quite happy with that. It's looking good. That's definitely not coming off of there. We've managed to get, I'll show you on this camera, we've managed to get it really flush, so you can't even get your fingernail in behind it to pull at it on any of these edges. I mean, you could down there, I suppose, but it's not coming away. What was that? A bird just randomly threw something at my window. Whatever. Right, okay. Let's see if it works. Oh, I have put the batteries back in already. Wonder where I'd put them.
Sunny's hot-headedness, Fredo's childlike naivety, Michael's cold, calculating nature. Catching these characters from the inside out, how they cook and eat and play with their kids and fall in love, bicker with their siblings. They are not prisoners of plot.
I think it's Radio 4 again.
We talked a lot about The Godfather and the way it's intimate as well as epic.
Take away the crime element. The Godfather is a classic immigrant story. It's the newcomer to America, and it's his journey.
Alright. Now, at this point we could keep going. We could keep trying to get this bit perfect and this bit, you know, but we're at the point where you're into diminishing returns now. There's, you know, the few small surface scratches. I haven't been able to get 100% of the dirt out of this tuning knob here. But I think to restore something back to 100%, you're kind of stripping it of its history. I've got a few vintage air guns, and I will do work on them. I'll get them working properly as well as they can. But some people go down the route of replacing the stock or, you know, completely refinishing it, and they want it to be absolutely, you know, factory condition. Nah, I don't like that, really. I like things to have history to them. So this is looking nice. I'm happy with how it is. We didn't manage to get this grill completely flat, but it's certainly looking a lot nicer than when I first got it, because it's actually attached correctly. So yeah, we're going to find a nice spot to put this. Yeah, and then I've got myself a nice little AM/FM radio for when I'm working. Lovely. So the spot I have picked out for it is this, my little writing corner. Writing is one of my other hobbies. Sometimes it's nice to just sit down and write something. Either do it on a laptop, or if you want, you can do it by pen and paper. So I have this little corner here for it. I don't really make any videos about my writing it's hard to make an interesting video about someone sitting down and writing something, but it is quite peaceful to sit down here sometimes. So I mean, in there you can see I've got various bits and bobs, old-fashioned stationery, etc. In here we have my old style fountain pen with the blotting ink. Sometimes it's nice just to sit down. So yeah, and the radio is going to go in this neat little space I've got here for it. So we'll move the chair out of the way. It's going to go right here. It just happens to fit perfectly under this bookshelf. So we shall extend the aerial. It's going to slot in there like that. There we are, nice and safe, nice and secure, and if I'm sat here late at night I can just flick it on.
I'm really interested in tension, held and
listen to
sustained
the radio.
tension in film. How you construct this.
The noise, by the way, is the dogs playing. Give up, animals! So yeah, that's it. That concludes this radio restoration series. Little radio, quite a bit of work. But there she sits, nice little spot. Now, as I said, I do have other sources of entertainment. I mean, you can see down the corner, I've got a Google Nest in there. But sometimes it's nice just to have a quiet radio on the go. So, yeah. And I just like doing stuff like this. So that pretty much concludes this radio restoration. I'm going to, at some point, get back to my other radios that I'm working on. But for now, all that remains to be said is thank you for watching. One last thing before we go. I finally figured out what this is for. I didn't have to do any research into it. It turns out all you have to do to figure this out is read it properly. Now, when you look closely, I still haven't worked out why this map of the world is the wrong way round. I mean, why Australia is over here, and you've got North and South America here, and then that looks like Africa. Then Christ knows what all this is meant to be up here. Don't know why it's such a weird way round, but that's what it is. But it's here, GMT, and it's your different time zones, and this is how they're divided. Now, obviously, if you look on a globe, these would be straight lines going round, but of course, they're not always like that, because if you have a city that falls just on one of these lines, well, you're not going to have half the city in one time zone and one in the other, so, you know, they'll just pick one. So they're not perfect lines, but yeah, that just helps you work out, say if you're going travelling with something like this, which I suppose is what these little radios were originally for, this helps you work out what time zone you're going to be in. Because of course shortwave radios don't transmit 24 hours a day. You have to be able to work out when they're going to be transmitting. And say BBC World Service, its schedule runs according to British time, GMT. But if you're somewhere else, you're going to need to work out what time it is if you want to catch it. And then these bottom figures are just your frequency ranges. They match up with what it says here on the front. So FM 88 to 108. Yep, makes sense. Medium wave 530 to 1600. Yep, and then the same with your shortwave bands there. So, yeah, no great mystery, just had to read it properly. So, yeah, thank you for watching.